And what would you recommend, or what strategies do you have, or does your company support landlords with, or potential landlords with, ensuring that they have the right things in place to mitigate that risk? I'm going to introduce Pauline. And Pauline, as I said, is someone that I've got to know over the last few years and is someone that I really value knowing. She is the administrator, I should say, or leader or owner of Smart Landlords. Pauline, it's so great to have you here. You know that ever since joining your group, I've been a big fan. You've been a great supporter of pretty much everything that I do. You moderated one of the panels at the East London Property Expo and did an amazing job. And last minute, you brought some fantastic panelists. So I just want to thank you and welcome you this evening.
Thank you. Thank you so much for having me on your show today, Anthony. Thank you. Yes. And it was like, what do they say? They say diamonds are made under pressure, aren't they?
Yes.
So yes, and it was a great event, and I've made many connections that I've kept up with. And one of the things actually that I don't think I've ever mentioned to you, this year's I reconnected with an old friend, and it's so lovely to kind of meet somebody that you've known for years. We'd kind of dropped off each other's radar,
Yeah.
so that's what the power of kind of going to these in-person events is that exchange of expertise, and that kind of being amongst people that you want to emulate, and also the connections that you make. It was
And
very cool.
and one thing you may not know, because this happens several times at events that I've been at where you are, there are people that are there and they're saying, I've been a part of the Smart Landlords group for a while, but I've never met Pauline. And it's good having that experience where people have known you or even listened to your radio show. So there's
Yeah.
lots of people that listen to your radio show. And during this conversation, I do want you to talk about your radio show. And I know we've had some discussions around the Renters' Right Bill and the abolition of Section 21. And you are an expert in many areas and you bring a lot of people together. So I'd love to hear your thoughts and just find out a little bit more about, let's just start with the Renters' Right Bill. So, what can you tell us about that?
So at the moment, it's gone through the Commons. So I think this government almost did a cut and paste of what the last government had started, but with more of a judicial feel to it. But unfortunately, because the Labour government are inexperienced, they're not as business savvy as the Conservatives are, and I think less of them are possibly landlords. So they don't really have that perspective of
Mm.
really knowing how things work. So it's a little bit cat-handed. But anyway, they've said that they needed to abolish Section 21. Um, I was a landlord from the mid 80s until about 8 years ago. But I remain in the industry because I provide all the services to landlords. So I'm a domestic energy assessor, I do inventories, I'm a fire risk assessor, and so on. So if you've got a HMO, I can bring along a few more people and we can do all the checks that you'd ever need to have, including floor plans, in one session. And we've done that, for quite a few people. In fact, quite a few people that are in the landlords groups across WhatsApp. And during that period, I've never used the Section 21. I've always got people out via agreed surrender. I've always, yeah, and sometimes it was all about being compassionate and understanding and just giving that person some breathing space and then communicating to them, I don't want you to accumulate arrears, because if you do, my policy is to pursue you to the very end. And it could go on for years into after this relationship has ended. I might not I might not contact you for 5 years and 11 months. But if I do catch up with you, the clock starts again for that 6 years, doesn't it?
Yeah. Now, I am seeing some people scratching their head. So let's just start and take away some of the jargon. So, how would you explain, or what is the Renters' Right Bill for those people who don't know?
Okay, for those who don't know, so the Renters' Rights Bill was a set of reforms to the whole of the private rented sector to give tenants additional security of tenure, and to stop them being victimized by what they would call, they use this word a lot, rogue landlords. So landlords who are non-responsive to repair issues, landlords who neglect their tenants, landlords where the tenant might have damp problems or very specific problems and they're not being addressed properly. And so and then the Section 21, a lot of tenants groups felt that being able to evict somebody without fault was, with, over quite a short period. So somebody could live somewhere for many, many years, and then within, say, 6 months, you might be out. Well, of course, the courts have slowed that down now, but they kind of felt that that was very horrible. So they've always called for the abolition of Section 21. I will tell you later on what the catch with that is and why it's not going to help all tenants.
Okay, that's going to be interesting. Now, I've always felt with most things, and particularly with things in the economy, there's an economist that I like, and Andrew Wright and I always seem to have conversations around the approach as far as social housing, etc. But one of the things that Thomas Sowell says is, in the economy, there are no solutions, just compromises. So it sounds to me, from what you were saying, the Renters' Right Bill was put together to protect people who are renting so that they have a little bit more security, they have more rights. But the problem that I see quite often in these things is it depends where you sit. If you are a renter, then those additional rights, those additional benefits are probably music to your ears. However, if you're a landlord, and especially, and I like how you brought out the term that is used so often, the rogue landlords. What if you're not a rogue landlord? What if you are an individual that, instead of maybe having a traditional pension, property is your pension, and you're using that to have something to retire? What if you're a great landlord, but you have a bad tenant? I think that's the
Exactly.
other side of the coin.
And that's one of the things I say is, what if you're facing a rogue tenant, a professional tenant who knows all the little schemes? So they come in, they're lovely, they pay their rent for a very short period of time, and then they just sit there and wreck your property. What about that? So in law, in legislation, in regulations, in the judicial system, you're only a rogue landlord if you go through a judicial process and you end up with some kind of penalty enforcement action, and your name is put on a particular list. Then you are a rogue landlord. Otherwise, we're all just landlords. We're all just landlords offering a fairly unique service in a sector that was growing up until George Osborne put his boots in. And we provide an important function directly to private tenants and sometimes through local authorities. And what the Renters' Rights Bill aims to do is to cut out those relationships with agents, and particularly with rent to renters, and for you to then give your property to the council instead to help them with their very hefty backlog of tenants they've got, which is growing by the day. And the property commentators don't say this enough. So going back to what I was saying about the abolition of Section 21 harming tenants.
All right, so before we go into that, because I know that you know this inside out, but we always have people that are maybe looking or considering becoming a landlord. So all of the terms won't be as clear to them. So you talked about Section 21. What exactly is Section 21?
So it's the means of regaining possession. So you give your tenant a notice. It's normally for 2 months. Under the Renters' Rights Bill, that will change, but at the moment it's 2 months. And then at that date, they're supposed to leave. If they don't leave, you then have to go for a court process. So there are two routes. One is called a Section 21, where you don't have to state a reason, you just want your property back. There are a couple of caveats to that. And then there's Section 8. So these are sections from the Housing Act 2004. So Section 21 kind of outlines the no fault eviction route, and then Section 8 talks about if you have various grounds. So at the moment, there's about 20 grounds. With the renters bill coming in, it'll be 30 odd grounds, which cover every scenario. So it's going to be possible to kind of not have very much of a ground and still find a ground within the new grounds that you'll be able to use. So breach of contract might be the one that becomes the default kind of non-specific, because in a well-constructed contract, there's always going to be a breach.
Yeah. I think the frustrating thing is people want to make money, but they don't want to spend money to make that money. So they want to cut corners and not pay the professional or not get the right thing or the right inspection, or they'd rather pay someone £50 extra to do a dodgy inspection than just to get the thing done properly. And
Like, I do get that an awful lot. People that want these property checks done, but it's like, oh, just give me a piece of paper that says that you've done it. And it's like, that's not really how it works, particularly with fire safety. Obviously, I'm putting my professionalism and my reputation on the line when I give you that certificate. So it can't just be, and it's not a pass or fail. It's something that's supposed to demonstrate the way that you're operating.
yeah, yeah. And it's there to protect you, it's there to protect your tenants. So we've had I think, a very good conversation around several things. Now, I just would like for you to give just three pieces of advice to anyone who's considering becoming a landlord, and maybe tell us how people could get in contact with you and some of the services that you offer.
Exactly. So the first piece of advice is, don't be in fear. So, or at least be in face everything and rise form of fear, not in the fear everything can run. And look after your own mindset. Be composed. So it's just like when you do stock market training, they say that you've got to know your own risk adversity, and you can't make decisions if you're stressed. Same with a landlord. So we know that the best creative state is one that is calm, where you've got your fight and flight under control, and you're able to make those creative decisions. Two, be open to learning. Um, Learning is a lifelong thing. We're never out of learning, but just be open and receptive to it. So if you say I'm full, I'm overwhelmed, that's how your body will respond to the new information that you're taking on. And three, I would just say, this is something that needs property is something that needs is a whole family activity, because eventually it should be going into a trust. So trust is about, it is a structure that where you can hold your assets, but it's also about the relationship you have with people.
Yeah.
So actively work on building trust with your tenants, with your clients, with your family, most importantly.
I like that, because that's one of the things that often gets overlooked in this conversation. I I've been in this situation myself, and I look back and I'm like, that was dumb. So I've been in situations where my mom owned a house, I owned a house, my sister owned a house, and all three of us are struggling. Instead of combining our resources and saying, well, I'm going to sacrifice maybe my independence for a while for the short term for a long term gain.
Exactly.
And quite often we don't look to family and friends and say, well, listen, let's in the short term maybe make a sacrifice. That might mean we're living together, sharing resources while we're saving up money to buy a property cash or have a higher deposit. And you mentioned the Windrush. I know from speaking to my grandmothers, both of them, when they first came over, that was their strategy. They had something called a partner. And
Oh
they
yeah.
put all their money together, and different cultures have similar ways of doing that. But it seems like we've moved so far away from that community approach. And obviously you can't trust everybody, and you don't want to be in business with everyone because you shouldn't be unevenly yoked. But you should be able to find a group of people that you trust, and you can share resources, skills. It's not just about money, because you spoke about, someone might have a skill and a business, not just as a side hustle, as you said, that they're going to come and do the refurb over, 17 weeks because they can only come over on weekends, but someone that actually has a business where they do this full time, and you can work something out that you can build that legacy. And you mentioned about trusts. So what would you say are the two key services that you offer?
So one is my role as an assessor, doing all the checks that landlords need. And then the other is as the curator of the Smart Landlords group, where we actively support landlords. So we have something called Smart Solutions, and where you can come and do a discovery call with us, and then sit down through a whole shopping list, is probably the wrong term, of topics where we can support you. So common ones are, I need help with an estate agent that's allowed the tenants to trash my home. That's quite a common theme that came up in the group today, but it's quite a common scenario that people come to me in a one-to-one. And things like reviewing a tenancy agreement. So if you do something like reviewing a tenancy agreement, because of the nature of the agreement, you get the whole overview of the tenancy theatre. So doing those kinds of things with Smart Landlord is quite helpful. We're unique in that we're not offering the courses that other people offer.
Yeah.
We want to arm your business. And then we also do training. So I will train you to be a pack tester. A lot of it will be what I call self-study. But I will look, there's a practical side where I can support you in going into that property for the first time in a scenario where everything's unfamiliar, and get you through it. Same with inventories, same. And then if you do inventory training, then of course you can be doing the midterm checks on your own property.
Yeah.
And a lot of the time properties are so different, and there's so many different elements that when you're looking and you don't know what it is, it's not helpful. So a lot of what we do comes with booklets, with what I call kind of pictorial dictionaries, where and then you've got that opportunity where I'm quite accessible still, where you can contact me and say, what is this?
Yeah.
And I
In
can
the
more or
group,
less tell you.
that's one of the great things about the group. There's always different bits of information. I remember September, I think it was, of 2024. I say that because we don't know when people are going to be watching this video. Prior to the changes in the right to buy scheme, you put something in the group, and a lot of people weren't aware of the pending changes in November. So you gave people the heads up, and then there was myself and some other brokers in the group that were then able to assist people in beating that November 19th deadline. People, I have a couple of deals that are getting ready to complete where people have saved £136,000. So they got their maximum discount. But as we close, Pauline, I just want to thank you. Your information will be in the description of this video. So what is the first stage as far as people getting in contact with you?
Well, just send me an email, info@smartlandlordsgroup.com. Reach out to me through you, Anthony, if they want to join the Smart Landlords group, or if they'd like to connect with me another way other than via email. And yeah, I'm very approachable, very approachable.
All right, so I'm gonna just talk a little bit more about getting a mortgage, because in order to be a landlord, you may need that mortgage, you may need a buy-to-let mortgage, or you may need a remortgage. Thank you so much, Pauline. The information, as I said, will be in the description, where people will be able to book a discovery call with you, and you'll be able to answer some additional questions. So from here, if you look in the description, you get my information. If you're looking to become a landlord, or you want to understand or look into some property strategies, make sure you read the description. Make sure you reach out to Pauline. I'll also put a link for the Smart Landlords group. It's a fantastic group. There's tons of brokers in there, accountants, and property professionals. It's always good to be able to share this information with people, and I appreciate everyone listening. And make sure that you like, share, and subscribe, because we are here to help give you the information that you need to make informed choices.
If you don't have a broker and you'd like to speak to someone, I'd love to talk to you. My name is Anthony Lindsay. My phone number will be in the description. And I've been in finance for over 30 years. I've done everything from wealth management to collection, so I know a thing or two.